I'm Sesely Omli. I am just a small town Kansas girl and grew up about an hour west of Manhattan. I'm at K-State now and the strength coach for rowing and cheer. So that's my current position. That's who I currently am, is filling that role. Yeah, this was my alma mater. I actually just got a job back here about a month ago. So I'm super excited to be back. But as far as who I am now, that's that's my role. And kind of what led me to this position was in high school, I played about every sport, just like a lot of small town kids do. And I loved everything, but I wasn't that tall. I was 5'4", and I was trying to hit in volleyball. And I was trying to play bigger positions in basketball. And my coaches were like, you need just to jump higher or grow. And I was like, well, I know I'm not going to grow. I stopped growing in like sixth grade. So I was like, this is not going to work out for me. And my brothers were athletes, and they're like, you know what? You need to lift. You need to lift heavier. So long story short, that's what got me into lifting, just trying to get a little bit better for my sports. But I fell in love with it. And then found out I could make a profession out of it, coaching. And I was like, from there on, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And I never switched my major. I studied kinesiology here at K-State, and just went full on towards it. And it's been an awesome journey. So I was interning here, interned at Clemson, I started at like a special assistant at KU. I was there for 2.5 years and kind of worked my way up, and then just got back to K-State. So still in the field.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have, quite a bit of that, real world experience, just doing it yourself with the athletic side, and then moving in now to the coaching. I think it's kind of cool to have that. Whenever you went to start lifting though in high school, you wanted to, get stronger, you wanted to get bigger, whatever it was, to be able to, be better at your sports. But what kind of mindset did you have going in when it came to fitness, and it came to lifting weights, and it came to strength conditioning? Like, were you that typical person was like, oh, I don't want to lift weights because I want to, I don't want to like kind of get big and bulky?
So this is a funny story, and not everybody knows this. So welcome to my life, everybody who listens to this podcast. But when it was about my freshman year when I decided to lift heavy, and I thought I was chubby at the time. I wasn't chubby. I was probably more just, I maybe had something to lose, but in my head, I told myself, it doesn't matter if you get bulky because you're already bulky. That's what I told myself. I remember clear as day thinking that. Well, it turns out when I started lifting crazy heavy, which now I know it makes sense, but it didn't make sense to me at the time, was I just slimmed down. I just like shredded up, and I was like, oh, this is nice. I wasn't expecting that. But so my mindset, I wasn't worried about that because I don't think I was fully happy with who I was at the time. And I'm sure that happens for a lot of high school girls early on. For me, it encouraged me to actually just go for it. Let's lift heavy as you can. And if you get bulky, at least I'm strong, So that was truly my mindset. And again, I slimmed down, and I loved it. I was just like, wow, this is cool. I love lifting. I love the challenge, and I'm starting to look better. So it was awesome.
Did you have any people like in your age group say like, oh, why are you lifting? What's that going to do for you?
I don't know if they question why I was doing what I was doing. I think I definitely had some friends that kind of weren't on the same boat as me. And I think that, they would make their little comments, and I think they were the haters in that time, not knowing it. They would make their little comments, and I was just kind of like, who cares? I like it. I have, like, I'm getting better. Like, why aren't you doing it? And that was fine. They were doing well at the time for their sports. And so, I think they just kind of let me be. I lifted with the guys. Like, it was just like, they let me be. They did their own thing in weights class. I just went off and lifted heavy weights.
Gotcha. And did the sports teams have a like specific mandatory strength conditioning session when you were there?
No, we didn't. I think freshman year it was mandatory, but it wasn't with the sports. And then it was just in high school in general. You had to take a PE class, which included our lifting session. And then after that, you could choose whether you wanted to weights class or not. And I just was like, yeah, I'm making sure that's in my schedule. So we didn't have very organized weights programs in high school unless it was the summer and you could come in the morning. It was open to everybody. So just like heavy male dominated classes, sessions. So kind of felt like an outcast in that sense, but I loved it. My brothers were in high school and I was in high school. So I just lifted with them and their friends. And it was so much fun. So
that's definitely pretty cool. Was the teacher of the class like compared to kind of what a strength conditioning coach knows at a whatever level, like at a pretty good level, like was that what comparable, or was it just kind of like your bro science kind of thing?
So Mr. King was my strength coach. He was also the football coach, which I think is super common, especially in smaller schools. And he wasn't super structured, so he wasn't anything comparable, but he just would encourage, he would give us our freedom because he wanted the people that wanted to work hard to like do their own thing. And so it gave me free reins to do whatever. And so we just put ourselves on our own programs. We would search stuff online. We would Google things that did not make sense at the time. We just didn't know any better. But yeah, he was a great coach, but definitely not as structured as collegiate athletics at all.
Yeah. Such a diverse set of experiences in high school. It seems like when you get to college, there's more of like this standard, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. But in high school, it really is like either, from the one end of the spectrum, it's like, we're not going to do anything. You can do it if you want to do it. And then at the other end, it's like basically a college style, strength conditioning thing. And man, it's so interesting to me, like how athletes can come from both of those ends of the spectrum and in between and, still be just as successful. Obviously you're probably going to have some type of advantage by doing, that in high school, that strength conditioning in high school, but like, especially if you look at players from like, other countries that may not have those resources, especially it maybe sports like baseball, they come up from just different countries and have no physical training experience besides just probably like running.
Yeah.
And how they can just be so good. I think that's a crazy part of it.
Yeah, no, that's so true. There's just all ends of the spectrum, especially like you said, coming from high school into college. And I have seen some freshman athletes know absolutely nothing, or they just learned some, crazy technique. And you're like, where did you learn that? We're gonna have to fix that. But that's pretty common, hey, forget everything you learned. We're starting fresh here. We just need you to have good attitude, coachable, work hard. We're going to start from there. But I think, it's crazy how high school is so different. I'm just happy that I got into lifting and then I could refine it from there. I probably did like 20% post chain, like in compared to my 80% just lower body pushing everything. And so it's just funny thinking about that. I never thought about that until I got to college and was starting to learn about strength conditioning. But you're high school, you're young, like you can kind of make mistakes like that because you're just training hard and, you're just having fun. So,
yeah, I think it's important too to just do something, even if it's not structured. Just like you said, it kind of like gets your body more ready for something, it's kind of like any aspect. When you're younger, it's almost like you're more able to do and learn and grow. And even if you make mistakes, it's, it's like, okay, we can redo this. And I think it's just important though, especially, and I think from a health aspect of like, a lot of athletes in high school don't go on to play college, but if we can teach them good ways to work out, good ways to move their body, if we can kind of throw in some nutrition, some good nutritional habits along the way and strength conditioning, I think those are good things we can do to just build a better culture of, health along the way for those athletes who are just like done with sports after high school.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I learned in high school through the types of working out that I did or the eating that I did was just how much my body could do, like discipline wise, pushing for an extra rep. things that I had no idea my body was capable of. And again, my programming was whack or was non-existent, and it didn't matter. I learned how to work hard. So, you know, in some sense, it wasn't the greatest thing because I never knew that I needed this time to recover. Like I didn't understand recovery at all. But I mean, it was just priceless to go through that phase and, you know, start to figure out how your body adapts when you're not even, you know, trying. You're just like, hey, I'm going to go work hard today. I'm going to go work hard today. And then after, like day after day, you're being consistent and the discipline pays off. And that truly translates to everything else. And at least for me, is specifically as a female, you know, I was kind of different in high school because I enjoyed that stuff, but it really changed my mindset on, okay, if I work for something, I will get rewarded, you know, for my work. And I think that everybody has to learn that in their own ways, but I got to through lifting. And then it, again, translates to everything else. So, like you said, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, just work and, learn as you go. So
when you were playing sports in high school, did you see and not to point yourself out as okay, I'm better than these people, but did you see yourself because you did, commit to that kind of workout and everything? When you were either at practice or in a game, did you see yourself be oh, I can do this a little bit better than this other person because maybe it's because I'm doing this workout?
Yes, I definitely felt like I could sustain my work longer. Looking back at it, I think that I was able to push a little harder, push a little longer than everybody else. But, I played with a lot of really good athletes, and we had good coaches that trained us well in our sport. But again, I think it goes back to my mindset was just after I started lifting, it changed. I didn't care if I was sore, Cecily, you're at practice, it doesn't matter if you're sore, you're going hard, you're working, you're here for, my mindset at the time was you're here for an hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours. Why waste that, So that was my mindset in the weight room. That was my mindset. It started translating to practice, started translating to school. You're in that period of time required to do something, make the most of it. Otherwise, you're just kind of wasting time. You're wasting everybody's time. And so as much as I, maybe hated doing a drill, I was like, Cecily, you're going hard. It's going to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I think, again, more than my physical fitness, the mindset I feel set me apart at that time, just because it was just something that everybody gets taught at some point, but not a whole lot of people got taught in high school, that mindset. So.
Yeah, definitely. There's, I think, a lot of benefit to physical training your mental side as well. And it's kind of a weird thing even to say right now, because a lot of people maybe kind of are uncomfortable by saying that, but it's so true. If you look at things like the military, hey, look at, it might not be for everybody, but look at how hard they go, just what they do. And they almost get sculpted into a completely different, person when it comes to that kind of discipline and mental toughness and everything like that. Like I said, it's kind of a weird time right now. And you can't say all these different things, but I really think you can use a physical, not necessarily in a punishment style way per se, but you can use physical training to definitely train the mind as well. Like you're saying, it helps us, stress management is just maybe one of the biggest things too, just understanding and perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective, stress management, that all goes into, people's physical activity levels. And again, what you were saying earlier, I think you find something that you like to do and, learn what, releases that stress for you. I think it doesn't have to be lifting for everybody, but I think physical fitness and just physical activity is just a huge outlet. Sometimes people are almost, I think, scared or nervous to really push their limits, because they aren't sure where they're at anymore, especially if they've stopped, working out for a while. But everybody that I know that's consistently working out or even came back to working out, they're always happy with themselves in the sense of they've accomplished something, they're disciplined with something, and it does translate to other things.
Definitely. Yeah. So getting into the strength conditioning side of things a little bit, and it's something that I find really interesting. I like to talk about with people is the technology. And, I brought that up and you're like, you know what? We really don't use that kind of thing. And I think that's just as an important point to bring up too,
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of times it can be a little bit of a crutch, I think, for that human intuition and like really focusing in on like paying attention. And not to say if you use it, you're not going to do that, but I think it develops those skills maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah. So I have had the opportunity to work with a good amount of technology um, in the past. So when I got to K-State and I'm working with rowing and cheer, those are two sports that just don't use it. We don't have, we have 6 elite forms, platforms with elite forms, so velocity-based training. But I work out too many girls to put on just 6 racks. And so we just don't use it. So, but it's been awesome because I think there's two sides of it. Because I have used technology and I have used it within my programming, you almost learn how to program without it, but in similar ways. So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is a lot of things just stay the same anyways. You keep the same, quote unquote, basic, simple programs that are gonna, help your athletes adapt, to their training and to the lifting or styles that they need. Regardless if you have velocity-based training or if you have, jump pads or, whatnot, you might have at another school. So I bet if you look at our programs, they're all very similar, whether they have technology or not. So I think I was really confident in coming back to K-State and knowing that I wouldn't use it. And I'm like, okay, I'll still program very similar. We can still, work on moving the bar fast without maybe having an exact read of it. The eye test, like you can start learning through your eyes, like what a fast squat looks like or what a fast bench looks like. And if someone is naturally a little slower, I can still tell if they're getting a little faster. So it's just all, coaching eye, things that you learn with a few years of coaching. But I'm very thankful for the time I've had with technology. It's been good, but.
Yeah, I think it can play at least a very cool role in the recovery side of things, not knowing when to, say, okay, maybe we should back things off a bit or, ask somebody, hey, are you getting enough recovery, sleeping enough? Are you eating, drinking water? All these different things I think play such a big role that is becoming more and more of a topic of discussion. But I think it's also like you look at social media, and I think athletes that come in nowadays, like everybody's on social media. The fitness social media is such a big thing. Like we're seeing everybody working out, posting videos. How do you kind of like keep people and keep athletes from not necessarily questioning you, but saying, hey, I've seen this on Instagram. Like, why aren't we doing it like this?
Yeah, I actually haven't got a lot of questions like that. I've gotten, why are we doing this? Like, I don't understand why we're doing eccentric squats. Like, why are we going so? I've had questions, but, I haven't came across that yet. I think it goes along with just who you are as a coach. Like, I really try to build my relationship with athletes so that they do trust me and that they don't, the more they trust you, like, honestly, I think the less they ask questions. I think they don't really care. I had a coach that I worked under. He said, the famous quote where they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. He was like, I don't think they care at all what you know. They just want to trust you, and they want to be able to say, hey, I'm walking in the weight room and Sesely knows what she's doing and she's going to tell me what to do. He said that and I was like, that's so true. Like, I think when they really, they create a good relationship with you, I think they're like, I think she knows what she's doing. I'm going to go in and just work hard for her. I think, there are those athletes that just want to know, and that's great. I tell them, please come up and ask me. If you're wondering why we're doing what we're doing, I want you to ask me so they don't have to wonder. But I think that's a big thanks to just the coaches that I've worked under, the head coaches I've worked under, just because they really create that culture more than even I do for their athletes. And so they pass them along to me, and they're working well. So
And I think culture is one of the biggest things when it comes to succeeding and no matter whether it's sports or the weight room or business or just life in general, like creating a culture that is like sustainable, that is, hardworking. One thing I think that is tough when it comes to culture is, I guess it maybe is true for professional sports as well, but I feel like in college, you're having constant new players come in. So
yeah,
how do you keep that culture up really whenever you're having an influx in and out?
yeah. I think thankfully, when you're at a 4-year school, you have time on your side. You have 3 years of upperclassmen that are helping with that. But that's why I think it's really important to instill every single year, the little things you want to focus on, because I have been a part of teams or assisted teams that there was a class that went through and the girls, probably didn't have as high as character as other years. And, that's tough. That's really tough. You don't get to choose as a strength coach who they recruited and who came in, and so you do your best to control what you can control. For us, if we have just even a pinch of, control of the culture, we're going to try it by just focusing on the little things. I think for me and for the other strength coaches I've worked with, we try to be disciplined on the little things and create a culture that way. But for me specifically, I want the girls to have an experience like I did in the weight room. I want them to love to train. So for me, I'm not going to be like a hard nose, make girls feel like they're terrible or they're not lifting hard enough for their, like, I'm going to encourage them. I want them to push and find that spot that I found. And so that really, I think, influences the culture that I try to create in the weight room. But I think, to your question, I think you just do the best you can with the girls that you have or the guys that you have, and then try to be disciplined on the little things, hold them accountable.
And one thing you did mention a little bit earlier was building your body and doing those type of things. There's a million different ways to do it when it, when you look at like the ins and outs, but like the most basic way is kind of the same ordeal. And you were saying like, okay, we have these, these athletes here for 3 or 4 years, and we can that's a good thing on this level, but on the level of like boredom, how do you keep things interesting? How do you keep things like, how do you keep the athletes wanting to come back and really pushing? Because I think when you're bored, it's hard to really push yourself.
Yeah. A couple things. I try to program so they can get stronger. And I think that's motivation enough, especially for most of them. They see themselves, they're able to PR here and there, like over their 3 or 4 years. And, when they look back at the year before or 3 years before, and they were like, wow, I used to not be able to do a pull-up, and now I'm adding 10 pounds to my pull-up belt and doing body weight pull-ups on my own with weight. That's motivating for most of the athletes that I've had. I think there are a few of them that are challenged more than others. And for that reason, I try to give them, maybe some different accessory exercises, or I say, hey, you can just pick your own, upper body press today, like given a little bit of flexibility, or depending on where we're at in the season or where we're at in the year, giving them flexibility when there's time for flexibility. Or just me trying to be creative as a coach too. So as far as main movements go, I try to keep it relatively the same, because we're not going to get better at anything if we don't do it a lot over time. And I tell them that, like, again, I think telling them what so they understand, like, why are we still squatting 3 years later? I'm going to tell you, because we need to get better at it. And this is a key movement for us, but we can work and adapt and change other things to keep it exciting for them. Or even getting their feedback. Sometimes I just like to ask, hey, like, what'd you like from the last phase? Did you like something that you guys did last year that, I didn't know you guys did, and I could put it in our program this year, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Like, as an athlete, you don't have control over so many aspects of what's going on in your world. So to kind of get a little bit of that back, even just a a thing here and there is pretty cool. But when it comes to, and I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but when it comes to outside of the weight room, once you're done with that training session, as a coach, do you share and really emphasize like guys or girls, like this is what we need to really focus on for the next however long until you're back in here?
Yeah, I think probably like most coaches, we emphasize the water and the sleep, and food. Eating enough food is huge for athletes. They just, especially female athletes, they tend to think that they need to eat less, and that's just a challenge. I mean, it's one of those things it's so hard. We say it, we preach it, we try to tell it in different ways. We have, a dietitian say it, we have our athletic trainer say it, but once they're out of our control, we're just kind of hoping for the best. And that's so hard to say because I mean, it, I know it, all of the strength coaches that you've interviewed know it. It's important. And we just try to educate them the best we can, but they're college kids and they're doing what they want.
Yeah. That's it. It's tough because like, you want to impart, it's not even the knowledge that you want to almost impart like the seriousness, the level of like, you will see yourself become better if you do these things. Like you want to, you almost want to like impart emotional knowledge upon them. Like,
yeah.
And it's so hard to do that for somebody unless it's something that they've experienced. I think that's one of the tough parts about life in general is like, you can get told so many times, don't do this, don't do that. And then it doesn't matter until you experience it and fail or, have something blow up in your face. And it's like, oh yeah, probably, that makes sense now. Probably shouldn't have, or should have done that.
Exactly. And my dad always says, the best people learn from other people's mistakes. And that's like exactly what most of us don't do.
Right.
We wait till we're dehydrated or we wait till we don't feel quite right. And we're like, I should have ate more. That's a very small example in life, but with anything in life, we usually have to make mistakes ourselves. If the more that we can start making those decisions based off other people's experiences, I think, we start to grow a little bit more, but obviously we have those times for reasons, but yeah, we try our best to communicate to them, what's going to help them recover. And I think for the most part, the athletes, they take well to it, but I think it's just inconsistent.
Right.
I think some days they are trying their best to get enough water and enough sleep. And then other days they're kind of like, I have to study, or I didn't grab a meal before I went to class and I have 3 classes in a row, those types of things. So,
yeah. And it's tough because you don't want to, like you said before, like be this super, strict, hard-nosed person, because it is still, a college experience and you want them to enjoy the journey and all that stuff. I think that's one struggle because like people like me, maybe people like you, like we take this stuff seriously, but we also enjoy it. We also like get so much pleasure out of, or at least I do, so much pleasure out of like, oh, how can I, sounds so weird, but like, how can I recover better? Like, how can I sleep better?
That's so true though.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's a game like kind of.
Yeah. It is. It's like you're looking for other people out there, like to be like that. And there's just I think so few people. But yeah, it is. It's tough to like impart that without actually having some type of their own kind of life experience before that really kicks in. But
yeah,
it's interesting though. I think there's just so many aspects when it comes to this whole thing. Getting better performance, strength conditioning, that type of thing. One thing that I do find extremely interesting is the way that our breathing can impact recovery.
Yeah.
And it's actually something I got introduced to a few years back, and I really didn't understand it. And I kind of hate saying it, but I never even really looked into it. And it was in a strength conditioning weight room. And then I just heard it again here recently about how, using your breath after lifting session or whatever it is can help to get that recovery process starting. And I just think it's so cool how like our breathing can have such an impact on our health, whether it's recovery or just during the lift, how we breathe during the lifting. I think we just like nonchalantly breathe throughout life, and they're actually such a cool way to do it.
That's so true. I need to look into that more as well, because I have heard a lot about that. I think where I've heard and tried to implement it more is like recovery right after, a run or a sprint, trying to control the breath and the breathing, to just recover faster in the moment. But even after a session, like you were saying, that's really interesting. I would love to look into that more. But specifically in the weight room, bracing, controlling your breath with a tight core, which is protection for their back. Yeah, it's amazing. Our bodies are cool.
I think the human body, like we're starting to understand it more and more, but like, I just feel like there's, we're less than 1% kind of tapped into like understanding what we're capable of. And kind of one example, I guess, kind of going back to the breathing side of things, but like I talked to somebody a while back about the Wim Hof method and how that can just like do all these crazy things for your mind and take you to like a different like dimension. It can like make your body almost, I guess, in the same way, like almost go into like a recovery method kind of thing. And just all
is
the
that
different
accounting? Is that accounting system, that method?
It's counting or time. I think you can either do it for a certain amount of breaths or like maybe a minute or 2 minutes. I can't remember which one it is now.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. It's really cool. If you aren't super familiar with it, I would, maybe not for the strength conditioning side of things, but just for like the way that we can, use these different avenues, and it might definitely lead into something else.
Yeah, I'll look into it for sure.
But when it comes to your own career starting, what do you, when you first were like, okay, I want to get into strength conditioning, you probably had this idea of this is what it's like. And I feel like everybody kind of has that idea of, even if you're not in the field, of like, you're getting all hyped up and you're playing loud music and you're yelling at people. But what is it really like whenever, you stepped into that role?
The misconception I had, because of how I trained in high school, I thought you go in and just train hard. It didn't. Like, you just wrote a workout up on the board and you just trained like through it, and you trained hard as you can. So the misconception for me, and this is so silly and people are going to laugh at me for saying this, I did not understand the concept of programming. I had no idea that there was a reason for laying it all out throughout the year, throughout the seasons. I had no idea. So that was the biggest eye opener. There is a reason for planning it out for performance. And so that was just a wake up call for me. And then another thing that I didn't know until I got into it was that you could be your own kind of coach. You could adapt to just being you, and but still be a really effective strength coach. And I had this idea that I had to be the raw, like, let's hype everybody up all the time, like the weight rooms turn up all the time. And it doesn't have to be like that. And for me, there's a time and place for that there, but sometimes too, you just bring the girls in, get them going, and, let them roll on their own. You don't have to stop and yell all the time. And I thought that's what it was. I'm screaming the whole time, calling girls out, So I think as far as just misconceptions going into it, those would be two huge ones. So,
yeah. And from the aspect of like being your own person, I think that also ties into like when you're around a group of people, especially people who look up to you, and probably usually people that are younger than you, like they look at you for consistency, especially in your mood and in your behavior,
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle kind of with like, okay, I'm having a tough day in my personal life or maybe in my professional life, like, but I need to get it straight for this session, for these people, for these athletes?
Yeah, I've definitely had that like self-talk for my, going through a hard day. I think I just told myself early on, I didn't want to be that inconsistent coach. I was under a coach that was a little bit more inconsistent, and I could tell, if there was a bad day for that person, I could tell it was going to be taken out on athletes, or, it was just a shorter fuse, just like everybody has. We have shorter fuses. So I feel like I was like, I don't want to be that way. This has nothing to do with the athletes. We're going to have bad days, but I found that you could communicate that to them. Like, it's okay. They know we all have bad days. It's okay to say, hey guys, like, I'm not having the greatest day, but we're going to make the best out of it anyways, and like tell them that straight on. And, or, as silly as it sounds, but going back to the breathing, like sometimes I'm just like, take a deep breath, sis. Like, don't say something to this girl that you wouldn't have said yesterday. And I really tell myself that sometimes because, someone says something on the wrong day and it kind of just pushes your buttons. But I really do consciously try to be consistent because, again, what you said, it's important for people who look up to you to know who they're going to get. So when they walk in the weight room, I want them to know who they're going to get. And if, I say something like it's a little off or like not my normal self, a lot of times I even laugh at myself. I'm like, guys, that was funny. Like, I'm sorry. Let me clarify what I meant by that. And, I just trying to be myself.
Yeah.
Be authentic with them. And that's when I'm going to get the best out of them too. So yeah, it's definitely the mindset to be consistent. So
yeah. And I think probably a lot of people have had that experiences with either coaches or teachers or somebody in their life where it's like, who is this person going to be today?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if anything, just like learning, this is all areas of life, all types of relationships. Sometimes we just need to learn when we need to control our tongue, like what is appropriate, right now. And if it's out of anger, then don't say it, and there again, like maybe the days I'm not having quite as good of a day, I'm going to try to be consistent as possible. But if I can't say anything good, let me just not say anything, so maybe that day in the weight room, there's a little less words, but it's just because for me, that's just controlling and keeping things consistent. That makes a big difference on the people that you're leading if they know who they're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does make a big difference. Moving to kind of your outlook, on this field, strength conditioning, I think it's a really great field, a lot of great people in it, and has the potential to kind of do multiple things in sports performance, but also kind of like we talked about before with just individual education on how to live a healthy lifestyle after sports. But when it comes to the field overall and the future of the field, like where do you hope to see the field improving in the future?
Yeah, I think we have a great opportunity to impact and develop athletes, physically, but also mentally. And I do think that is such a big concern right now is mental health. And even for me, I wouldn't say I have this program I've been implemented for mental health, but I think about it a lot. And I hope to create something that as a coach, I can talk with my athletes about, whether that's 5 minutes at the end of a session or the beginning of a session, or, just I really do think we have control over our minds more than we let on. And so with this overwhelming sense of depression, anxiety, stress, I think we have control over that a lot more than we let on to. And I know that sometimes it's not the case. And so I don't want to be insensitive by saying that, but I do think that we need to teach our athletes like just simple tools like that we can use in our personal daily lives, and especially in their sports, because that does cause a lot of stress as well. And I think moving forward, I hope that just the strength conditioning coaches, take that on. I think we can. I do know that a lot of big schools have sports psychiatrists or psychologists, which they're great. And I do think they're great outlets, but there's no reason that, we couldn't be teaching them coping skills or, little tools that would help, because that makes them more effective in a lot of areas of life, including their sport. So that's something that's been a big aspiration of mine. Not exactly sure how I want to tackle it. And so there's been a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, and then just trying to decide like how to make it happen.
Yeah, that's, I think, a good idea. I've never heard anybody say that, but kind of in the same way that we can like have a program for the physical side of things, I think having a program for more than that, the mental side of things, having a, one thing that I've been interested in recently, and I don't know if it's already out there or not, but like, what's a good sleep program, all these different things we think of from a strength conditioning aspect. But I think the first thing is always like the workouts, but there's so much more that goes into it from a sports aspect, especially like you said, you have all these pressures on you, you have all these different, time constraints, and you got to then throw in the student side, and there's just tons of mental pressure and stress. And I think that's a good idea. And there's definitely tons of people out there who I think would be on the same kind of wavelength. And so I think, if we
Yeah.
push
And
that
I
forward.
think, yeah, for sure. And I think one is just our society today. I don't even like to say that because I know we're capable of so much. But it's the idea that we are so overwhelmed and we have so much going on that somehow no one else in history has ever had this much going on ever. And it's just not true. And I don't know if we're just glorifying these things that we're overwhelmed with and we just aren't handling them well. Obviously, a huge topic and something to not even get into really is just technology, like our social media and our phones. Like, I think it does play a huge role in it. But, I almost think like teaching athletes, like, hey, like, you're not overwhelmed. Like, you need to learn what are some just practical skills or exactly what I was saying. I want to think of stuff that actually makes sense for them to, work through in their head or write down or journal or just changing their outlook to positive instead of negative and turning the tables a little bit in that sense. And I think we'll create healthier humans, and then we'll create humans that will recover better because their mindset is truly going to help that. Like, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
all over the place there, but I really do have aspirations for that.
I think that's actually, a really good idea. I would definitely be interested in thinking about that more and talking about that more and in the future. But it was really good to have you on the podcast and thanks for joining me today and sharing a little bit about your story, your journey, and just the field of strength conditioning.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. It was so fun talking to you.
And if you want to share your social media and share anywhere else people can follow you, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. So Sesely Omli, SESELYOMLI. I'm sure you'll have that written out, so it's easier to find me. I don't have a Twitter, but you can also email me at SeselyOmli@gmail. So those are a couple easy ways to get a hold of me. If anybody has questions or wants to collaborate on my mental health programming, I would love that.
Definitely. And like you said, they will be down in the description, all the links and that kind of thing. So
that'd be great.
But yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing some time here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you so much.